Welcome elected members, staff, guests and members of the public to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 11th of June 2025. I declare the meeting opened at 5:30 p.m. The City of Busselton acknowledges the Wardani and Bibleman people as the traditional custodians of this region and pays our respect to elders past and present. This meeting is being audio recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being live streamed on the City of Busselton YouTube channel. And I would remind people if you could please switch off your phones or to silent. The prayer this evening is going to be read by Pastor Joshua from the Cornerstone Church. Pastor, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you.
Good evening. Let's pray. Father God, we want to acknowledge your presence, your sovereign care, and your love for this city and for each person in it. Heavenly Father, as this city increases in size, production, enterprise, educational opportunities, healthcare, opportunities for young people and family, I pray that you would increase the capacity and ability of each person here to faithfully carry out and execute the duties and responsibilities that they carry. Father, I ask for wisdom for what is best for this community, that both affirms the history of this area, the land, the people, and the city that is here. Pray that the decisions would uphold the values of this community while affirming the significance of each person and family who lives here, works here, or goes to school here. God, I do pray for clarity in tonight's meeting, that you'd give the right words to each person to articulate what's on their mind for the discussion and the points of decision to be made and for ears to hear. And for strength for these leaders to be courageous to make the right decisions in the right way, with the right motivation, and in the right time. Seek your blessing over this meeting, over each person, and over the families of each person that is involved in this meeting, knowing that you, God, are aware of their circumstances and their needs as they entertain the needs of this city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that. In attendance, we have full attendance of council tonight. Just on the announcements, I'd like to mention that Phil Brandt, who is our superintendent for DFES, was awarded the Australian Fire Service Medal in the King's Birthday Honours. So congratulations to his work that he's done there, and just thought it'd be worthy of a mention. We have disclosure of interest on item 12.2. We've received a disclosure of financial interest from Councillor Ryan, Councillor McNeish and Director Palmer. Be read out prior to that item. Responses to previous questions taken on notice, that should be on screen. Thank you. I now move on to public question time, where members of the public have an opportunity to ask questions of the council about matters relevant to the city. I'll take this opportunity to remind everyone that public question time is conducted according to the council meetings, information sessions and decision-making processes, policies and the city's standing orders. We've received no bookings of public question time tonight. Are there any members of the public in the gallery who'd like to ask a question? Mr. Sims, would you like to come forward? For the records, state your name and where you are from.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors, CEO and everybody else. The first question is to do with the Local Planning Policy 4.1 and 5.5 Operational Management. A5.1 states, manager to provide a direct, non-automatic response within 12 hours. A5.2 Code of Conduct, quote, responsibility for the behaviour of guests, including restriction of guests after 10 p.m. This is an example where common sense should prevail, as the manager has up to 12 hours to respond after 10 p.m, becomes 10 a.m. the following morning. So with both examples having that sort of put up with the 12 hours. So can we please advise why the 12-hour response time cannot be reduced to a maximum of 1 hour response time? Note, originally the COB was looking at half an hour response time.
So your question is, could it be reduced to 1 hour?
Yes. Why isn't it? Why can't it be? Not would you?
Ms. Sear?
Happy for Director Barber to add any more to that, but more from a practical sense about what can be achieved in that hour if they're unavailable at the time or unable to respond in that time frame, unless there's anything else in there, Director Barber.
But it defies common sense, because if you allow him 12 hours,
Mr.
the
Sims.
problem has gone away.
Yeah. It actually came up, and we did debate this when it came up, and we did try and reduce the time limit. Council made a decision on the time that they did, which you were probably aware of, and that was given then the reasons really for practicality. It's just, it's unpoliceable, that's the issue.
So is 12 hours.
Your next question?
Saltwater Business Plan 14.1, Section 3.59, Saltwater Business Plan adoption for advertising. The city will be conducting a community survey input, obviously if councillors agree to it tonight, regarding the business plan that your recent legal advice said had to be conducted. What questions will the city be asking, and what outcome are you hoping to achieve from this feedback?
Ms. Sear?
Yeah, I'll refer that to Director Palmer. So can I just clarify though, Mr. Sims, thanks for the question. Was that did you say survey? Is that what I heard?
Survey input, I said.
Okay, because we're not...
So I'm not sure what you're actually doing.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we're not, the proposal's not to do a survey,
Okay.
but I think Director Palmer's got this one to assist with the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we're required under Section 3.59 to advertise the business plan, and people have opportunity to make submissions, but we won't be doing a survey.
Okay, so it's just for people to comment on.
Thank you.
Saltwater external review is my third question. Some time ago, we were advised that the external review would be conducted on the saltwater project and it would be made available to the community. Can you please advise the cost and when the community will see this review?
Ms. Sear?
Yeah, once again, I'll get Director Palmer to answer that one.
Director Palmer?
The report was presented to the council, who did not receive the report, and therefore it has not been accepted and will not be made public.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Didn't get what you meant by that.
The report was presented to council, I believe, in August for the first time, and then deferred for further information to be provided from the consultants. And it was re-presented to council in November, from memory, and council declined to receive the report. Therefore, it is not a public document. It's
To
confidential.
receive means the same as accept. Is that, I'm trying to understand what you're meaning.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Sear, if you want to clarify that.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, as Director Palmer said, because it's a document that hasn't been received by the council, it's not a document for public consumption.
Okay. Thank you.
But didn't they?
Thank you, Mr.
Has the council
That's-
received it or not? They just wouldn't accept it. Is that?
They haven't, it hasn't
Because
been received.
it's not clear what you're saying.
That's the answer we've got. Council has not received it, therefore it's not a public document. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Ms. Dale?
John Neville from Geograph. As at today's date, the 11th, does the council recognise or has it entered the saltwater building as an asset to the City of Busselton?
No, it's still under construction, so it's not currently on our...
Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, the speakers seem to be... Sorry, it's not currently... construction's not complete, so it's not currently contained in our asset registers, is my understanding. Yep. I can confirm, but that's certainly my understanding.
No, that's fine.
Yep.
Question 2. In 2023, when the City of Busselton consolidated the 10 building asset renewal reserve funds into a new building reserve, was this advertised as required by the Local Government Act?
Through the chair, no, it's not required under the Local Government Act because it was done during the budget process, and when you adopt it during the budget process, there's not a separate advertising process that occurs.
Okay. When the $5 million was removed from the building reserve and put towards the saltwater construction, were councillors made aware that this transfer of funds was invalid, as it does not meet the requirements of what this fund was for?
Sia?
Thanks for the question again, Mr Evell. It does. I'd probably need to see the reasons why you feel it doesn't.
It makes no reference. It's for repairs and maintenance. It's got nothing to do with construction of a new building.
No, it is.
On
There's a section
meaning
in
of the
that.
reserve.
Sorry, yep. There's a section in that. I think Director Pearson's got the wording for you.
Yeah, no, I can confirm that the current reserve purpose, current at the time of that transfer, did provide for other building purposes not currently provided for in other reserves. That's not the exact wording, but it does. It was broad enough for that use.
Okay, yeah. That's not what was said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can send you the reserve purpose if you like.
Pardon?
I can send you the current reserve purpose. I think we may have, but I'll send it to you.
You've sent it before,
Yeah.
but I'd like to see if it's been changed again, because it wasn't in the original when it was changed.
Yeah, we
in
do change them through
2023.
the budget processes, so I can confirm that
Thank
for
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? I can't see behind the chair, so... Oh, it's Ms Shackleton, if you'd like to come forward.
Michelle Shackleton of Abbey. Can you please outline the advertising schedule for the saltwater business plan that was developed in response to the city's non-compliance of the LGA section 3.59, please?
Okay, Director Palmer, please.
Yeah, I'm just referring to the section in the council agenda report in timeframes at the very end. It has advertising will commence on the 23rd of June this year through to the 4th of August 2025. And then we've allowed some time for those submissions to be reviewed and a report prepared to the council for the 27th of August agenda.
The question was whether it was going to be weekly or monthly or fortnightly or in every paper, one paper.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. It will be advertised, I guess we haven't worked through that level of detail yet, but it will be advertised on certainly a weekly basis through our local papers for the 6-week period in the community notice page in the weekly publications.
Yeah. Was it today? So.
And it will be advertised more broadly through the West Australian as well.
Sorry, just through the chair, I don't know if that was a question or not, but no, it wasn't in today's paper because council hasn't considered it yet.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
It's up for discussion tonight.
Wonderful. Ratepayers are forced to rely on their elected council members to ensure that our financial support isn't being squandered. To that end, we must assume that money set aside in reserves over a number of years for the maintenance of the 10 of the city's primary buildings were essential and purposeful planning at the time. My question is, what plan has the city and council designed to replace the $5 million in ratepayers' funds that have been removed from the consolidated, take a breath, building reserve to bolster the financial overrun of the saltwater project.
Director Pearson?
Yeah. There's no plan per se outside of the long-term financial plan, and the long-term financial plan sees the building reserve close from memory with a balance at year 10 of about $9 million. So we are continuing to transfer funds to that building reserve over the next...
Long time.
over the next 10 years, that's right, with a closing balance. And that closing balance of $9 million is also taking into account expenditure through that period. So that's a closing balance that's a net closing balance of $9 million, which based on our current asset planning, which obviously is reviewed all of the time, is felt to be sufficient. And obviously we review that long-term financial plan every year so that we can review that.
Maintaining a balance.
And obviously as asset planning changes, we can adjust that as required.
Thank you. In preparation to submit my response to the new saltwater business plan, I've had reason to revisit a number of documents and minutes regarding the project, only to find a surprising number of alterations and additions have been effected. In the interests of full and open honesty and transparency, where can ratepayers find a list of all these alterations? And if there is no current list, as the Mayor, will you direct the CEO to publish a list as soon as possible, please, including the dates?
I won't be directing anybody to do anything until I know, but Councillor, would you like to respond to that?
So firstly, I'd just like to say that obviously this is pending a decision of council tonight, so not in play at the moment, but Director Palmer may have some comments on documentation.
Probably a question. Do you have an example of a document that you've
There
seen
was a
change?
minute, two lots of minutes, I haven't got them in front of me at the moment, where there was reference made in the minutes that this document was now available, and it wasn't available at the time the minutes were put out. You wouldn't know about that unless you were going backwards through all these documents.
Yeah.
I've got a stack about that big.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and I doubt that the general community would be able to do that.
Yes, it is a lot of work, and that's when an item was confidential and then has been able to be made non-confidential. So that would be that
There's
change.
also names of things have been changed. So what was previously beach
Yeah.
or BPAC has now changed to saltwater. That's a change, which affects the timing of when things were released.
I'm just trying to stick to questions, that's all, if I may.
I'm just
rather
trying
than
to
those.
explain
Sure,
the sort of things because I was asked for
And with,
explanation.
I mean, I always say to the public, if you've got some sort of more complicated questions, it would be great if you can give them
didn't realise
in
it was
writing
hard.
beforehand, because you can imagine it's quite difficult to respond on the fly, as where otherwise we may just have to take everything on notice. But
I wasn't, sorry, I didn't realise I was going to be asked to give specifics.
So,
Yes, if you'd like to email me
Yeah.
some examples, I can provide explanations as to why the document.
Why do I have to supply you with a list when you're the one that changed them? That doesn't make sense at all. I'm
all
sorry.
right, thank you. I'm not. Thank you. Just supply the question, it'd be great. Thank you. Are there any more further questions? Please come forward. Mr. Dickey.
Andrew Dickey from Busselton. My question is about short-term rental accommodation in Busselton and agenda item 12.2 in tonight's council meeting. I would like to state firstly I have no personal stake in this issue as I do not own any short-term rental properties. When the new state registration system for short-term rental properties was legislated, I made inquiries with the state government about whether the City of Busselton annual fees would be replaced by the annual state registration fees. The answer that I received was, I quote, "In making its decision to proceed with the implementation of a statewide registration scheme, the government's intention is that it replace existing local government registration schemes and that there be no duplication of regulation between state and local government. The Department of Mines, Industry Regulation and Safety, Consumer Protection Division, is currently in consultation with the City of Busselton to determine appropriate transitional arrangements for ceasing the City of Busselton's registration scheme and to ensure that there is no duplication of fees. I'll repeat that. To
So
ensure that there is
could you
no...
just state your question, please? Thank you.
I'm kidding.
Well,
have
I
to provide
understand, but this is question time. You know, Mr.
Okay.
Dickey, just state the question.
Agenda item 12.2 in tonight's meeting proposes the introduction of a $295 annual fee for short-term rental properties in Busselton. My question is, has the City of Busselton ensured that this $295 annual fee, charged in addition to the annual state registration fee, is actually legal under the state legislation and does not represent a duplication of fees?
Thank you. Mr. Sear.
Thanks for the question, Dr. Dickey. So the fee you've referred to, the $295, is not for registration, it's for the DA process, which is separate to registration.
Development application becomes annual rather than in perpetuity?
Yes, I believe so. Is that correct?
That's a major change.
Yep.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's sliding scale. So the initial approval would be on an annual basis, and any reapproval, there's a sliding scale of reapproval timeframe depending on whether there's been experienced issues with that property or not. It'll depend on time, but it's a separate process. So a DA is always required. Registration is with the state, it's a separate process.
So there are other development applications that are on an annual basis. There's a precedent for this, is there?
Any development application can be time limited. There are examples that have time limits, such as extractive industries, but there's no restriction on limiting time with a DA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Ms. Bennett?
Good evening, Jane Bennett on behalf of BARA, which is Busselton Area Ratepayer and Residents Association, and I'm from Yogonup.
Thank you.
So my first question is under the WA Work Health and Safety Act 2020, there's a requirement to carry out suitable and sufficient risk assessments of risk to anybody affected by an undertaking of City of Busselton. If e-scooters are used and the city's public liability insurance is covering potential injury, then it becomes part of the city's undertaking and there is a legal duty on City of Busselton to assess the risk. What risk rating was given to the Neuron e-scooters being offered in the City of Busselton?
Mr. Sear?
Or I'll just ask Director Pearson to respond to that one. Thank you.
I probably can't respond to the question around what risk assessment was done, but I can clarify that the Work Health Safety Act, it's fairly complex, so it's a simplistic version. It applies to workers and other persons in a workplace. So I guess members of the public using Neuron scooters out in public areas are not, would not generally be considered workplaces, and therefore the Work Health Safety Act wouldn't apply to them in that context. But yes, there may be other public liability insurance, etc. I can't sort of respond to the rest of that question, sorry. But
Thank you.
So no risk rating then from what you've...
When the item was considered by the council to enable Neuron to have an arrangement for the provision of the e-scooters, there's always a risk assessment as part of that council report. I can't recall that at the time, but could certainly be available online to see what risk assessment was done on that.
Would you be able to email that, Max? Is that possible? Thank you. Or I will email you if you like, and
Thank you.
you can email me back.
I
Your
could
next-
probably add to that as well, that I've got their agreement in front of me, and there is no liability to the city at all. We're fully indemnified, and the licensee must take full responsibility for any claims that are made due to accidents or incidents relating to their equipment.
Okay, because I have read their insurance policy.
Yep.
So
Sorry.
I'll go to my next question
Sure,
then.
thank you.
If somebody is killed on an e-scooter and City of Busselton have not carried out a suitable and sufficient risk assessment of the risk of that happening, then that can become a criminal offence under the industrial homicide and manslaughter provisions. These fines are immensely high and are not covered by insurance because it's criminal liability. Can City of Busselton provide a copy of that public liability insurance that shows that councillors and staff are covered if somebody is killed?
Yeah. Through the chair, I think similar to what Director Pearson said before around the work health safety legislation, it's not necessarily considered to be covered in that
So you
respect.
don't believe that there's any risk? Okay. Third question. As elderly or disabled people are at more risk from any collision with a scooter, City of Busselton also needs to have performed a disability impact assessment, or that can put themselves at odds with the disability provisions of the Western Australia Disability Services Act 1993. Has this assessment been performed by City of Busselton?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that. Off the top of my head, aware of that legislation, but we do have constructed dual-use paths which can be used for traversing of traffic such as that and pedestrians as well. So I'd have to take that on notice, the rest of that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions to the public? Okay, I move on to presentations by parties with an interest. Mr. Evell, sorry, just a small question. You're clicking your pen rather a lot and tapping the chair. If that could stop, finding it a little bit distracting. Sorry, you're clicking your pen quite a lot. So I was wondering if you could stop doing that. Can you hear me? Yes. So I'm just asking if you could stop clicking your pen. Yeah, thank you. No, that's all right. You probably didn't notice you were doing it. We have a presentation party with Lisa Pemberton, and she will be speaking on item 12.2, the local planning policy 4.1, unhosted STRA outcomes of community consultation. Please come, Lisa, you have 5 minutes.
Hello, Mr Mayor, councillors and staff. My name is Lisa Pemberton and I own 20 Henry Wilmot Drive in Geograph. I'm here tonight regarding item 12.2, Local Planning Policy 4.1 for unhosted short-term rental accommodation. I've spoken to some of you over the last week and understand some of the issues that can arise from unhosted short-term rentals. My husband and I purchased a block of land in 2023 in the Settlers Beach estate, which we are currently building our future retirement home on. Prior to deciding where to build, we contacted the city to ensure any property we were considering buying would be in an area where unhosted short-term rentals were allowed, so that we could build our home in Busselton prior to retirement, have it as our own holiday home for the majority of the year until we retire, and for a couple of months of the year we could use it as an unhosted short-term rental to assist with costs of the home. City officers advised the areas where this was possible and emailed a map of areas where there was a possibility that unhosted short-term rentals may be restricted in the future. So we made sure we did not buy in an area where unhosted short-term rentals were considering being restricted in the future. We're now 1 week out from practical completion of our home, and 2 weeks ago we received a letter from the city advising of Scheme Amendment 61, which is proposing to make unhosted short-term rentals a prohibited use for our property. I then found out about this draft policy, for which many property owners like ourselves have not been directly consulted. We did not put in a submission on the draft policy during advertising, as we were not aware of it. We lodged our development application to use our home as an unhosted short-term rental last Friday, but if this draft policy is adopted tonight, I'm concerned that our application could be refused. I'm sure there are others building in the locality with a similar plan who are also not aware of this policy. Had we been made aware of the Scheme Amendment 61 earlier, we would have been able to lodge our application for unhosted short-term rental prior to applications being suspended. We note from the minutes of the meeting in March 2025 that Council decided to add the Geograph location to the exclusion area for an unhosted short-term rental because the area is said to have many Department of Housing properties, long-term private rentals occupied by many struggling with the cost of living, and with investors purchasing lower-cost housing to be used in the tourism industry, forcing out long-term renters. The Settlers Beach Estate pocket where I'm building is a new private residential estate that is not characterised as a location with lower cost housing, and as it is newly developed, it does not accommodate long-term renters either. We are building a quality home in a quality residential estate that is less than 500 metres from the beach and a kilometre to Busselton town. We do not want to use it as a full-time unhosted short-term rental. We just want the option to be able to use it as one for up to 120 nights per year for a maximum of 6 occupants. Our home is designed for families and not partygoers and will not be at a price point for rental by partygoers. I've provided a plan showing Settlers Beach Estate in red. As you can see from this plan, Settlers Beach Estate is all new housing. We respectfully request that Council modify the Appendix A Busselton East Geograph Plan to exclude Settlers Beach Estate from the non-preferred unhosted short-term rental area. I've also included another plan with the recommended modified geograph area in yellow. The rest of the geograph area, in my view, contains much older housing stock. Therefore, the remaining 100 hectares of the geograph area may be appropriate to remain as a non-preferred unhosted short-term rental area under the policy to protect those long-term renters. As these older houses may be more likely to be cheaper short-term rentals, therefore they may likely to be rented out for parties or by large groups. If Settlers Beach Estate is excluded from the non-preferred area, and if I'm able to use my property for an unhosted short-term rental for up to 120 nights a year for a maximum of 6 people, it will give opportunity for families to come down to Busselton and use the property, spend their money within the city of Busselton. So I think there's a positive in allowing unhosted short-term rentals in Settlers Beach Estate. I'm hopeful that councils will move to support a motion tonight for the modified and alternative recommendation for the geograph area that I have included with my presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Lisa. Okay, we now move on to deputations. We have Andre Schoenfeld, who will be speaking on item 12.2, Local Planning Policy 4.1, Unhosted STRA Outcomes of Community Consultation. You have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and city officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Andre Schoenfeld from Dunsborough Lakes, and I'm here representing the Schoenfeld family in the back right corner. By way of background, I'm a qualified town planner with around 25 years of experience in local government and planning. Started my professional career next to South Africa's Kruger National Park, an international tourism destination. And since migrating to WA, I've worked in some of the state's best-known visitor regions, including Margaret River and Broome. In Margaret River, I served as a planning manager, and in Broome, I was the Director of Development Services. Since 2019, our young family has called the Southwest home. In early 2023, we began building our forever home in Dunsborough Lakes, visiting the site almost weekly until we moved in at the end of January. The presentation from the lady just before me echoes a lot of what our experience was as well in terms of making a specific decision to invest into Dunsborough Lakes with the potential of renting our house out as short-term rental accommodation as well. So it came as a surprise to read in the newspaper one weekend that the city was proposing changes to its local planning policy that would prohibit short-stay accommodation in Dunsborough Lakes. Today, I'm here to express our concerns about draft Local Planning Policy 4.1 short-stay accommodation, specifically the restriction of unhosted short-term rental accommodation in non-preferred areas like Dunsborough Lakes. We respectfully ask Council to remove the non-preferred area designation from Dunsborough Lakes and other established suburbs. In non-preferred areas, if the non-preferred areas were to remain, we request that you permit up to 90 days per year of unhosted short-term rental accommodation, consistent with the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme regulations and what is already permitted and exempted in the Perth and Peel metropolitan area. And in both cases, we requested you update the associated scheme amendment currently out for consultation so that unhosted short-term rental accommodation is not prohibited, but instead allowed with planning approval or limited to 90 days annually in these areas. This approach protects the long-term housing, allows for occasional participation in the visitor economy, and provides a flexible, enforceable, and fair solution. We understand that the policy is intended to address housing supply and affordability, but with respect, this is a flawed premise. Housing pressures are a national issue, driven by construction bottlenecks, population growth, and interest rates. Restricting unhosted short-term rental accommodations in suburbs like Dunsborough Lake will not create meaningful long-term rental supply. Most of these homes are second homes, family retreats, or owner-occupied, with occasionally being rented out during peak seasons. These homes won't become affordable rentals because of a planning prohibition. And even if they did, trying to manipulate local property values through the policy to lower affordability is counterproductive, economically risky, and undermines investor confidence. The idea that families who've built in Dunsborough Lakes should accept a drop in property value to somehow make housing more affordable is not only economically unsound, it goes against the core Australian values of fairness, free market, and everyone having a fair go. Importantly, the ratio of short stay accommodation to the housing stock has remained steady over the 2 decades. This was true even when I was working back in Margaret River. And I recall sitting with planning staff from the city of Busselton on a working group commissioned by Adele Farina and Alana McTiernan back then as the Minister of Planning to address the holiday home regulations. Busselton became a leader, recognising that all the coastal settlements had a role to play in tourism. The city's policy allowed everyone to participate, not just those living in a beachfront. It gave residents across the district the opportunity to benefit from the visitor economy. Dunsborough Lakes provides its own tourist attractions, including proximity to the beach and to a golf course. If the true concern is amenity, then we agree it should be protected. But let's not do so with let's do so with operating standards, conditions, and enforcement, not by drawing an arbitrary line on a map between preferred and non-preferred areas. Amenity is not dictated by geography. It's determined by behaviour, regulation, and compliance. If unhosted short-term rental accommodation can be managed in one suburb, it can be managed in another. The state government clearly agrees, allowing up to 90 days of unhosted short-stay accommodation to be exempted from planning approval across the entire Perth and Peel metropolitan area. The Department of Mining Industry Regulation Services registration system is already in place and it tracks compliance. It notifies owners as they approach the 90-day limit, assisting with compliance. Making unhosted short-term rental accommodation illegal in some suburbs won't necessarily reduce the amenity issues. It may just push the practice underground, making enforcement even harder. Instead, I urge you to consider introducing differential rating categories to fund the enforcement, allowing additional planning conditions for noise, parking and response times, which was discussed earlier, and applying fines for non-compliance through the planning infringements, which could attract up to $500 per breach. This model creates a framework for safe, respectful, and short stays without resorting to bans. This policy introduces significant inequities between neighbourhoods, creating a two-tiered housing market. Similarly, homes a few blocks apart will be treated differently, not because of design, not because of behaviour, not because of the attraction surrounding it, but purely because of policy. The result, higher prices in preferred areas, greater inequity in the community, and fewer opportunities for families in non-preferred suburbs to participate in the tourism economy. That's not fair, and it's not good planning. Our young family invested in Dunsborough Lakes with the understanding that occasional short-stay use during holidays were acceptable, as they've been in Busselton for decades. Now we're told we can't, even though our neighbours in Old Dunsborough can. Finally, let's speak about the Busselton's identity. In the late 2000s, when the city created opportunities for local residents and families to participate in the visitor economy through its holiday home policy, the city of Busselton was seen as a leader in achieving economic prosperity and social advancement for its community. At the time, the policy and the building blocks for prosperity was being put in place. Currently a councillor, Councillor McNeish, was the CEO at the City of Busselton. I remember meeting with him in his office as Busselton and Margaret River was working together on the joint Capes Regional Economic Development Strategy, a strategy that encourages and supports tourism as a key economic sector and industry that the entire community could get involved in. The strategy back then, from memory, also identified major infrastructure upgrades, including the Busselton-Margaret River Airport and upgrades at the Busselton foreshore. Now, almost 20 years later, the city proudly calls itself the WA Events Capital. You've earned national recognition being named Australia's top tourist town in 2024. You host world-class events like Ironman, the Jetty Swim and One Night Stand. These events attract tens and thousands of visitors, but those visitors need a place to stay. Removing the ability for families in suburbs like Dunsborough Lakes to let their homes for even a few weeks per year during peak periods risks undermining the very economy that the city has worked so hard to build. And if unhosted short stay for 90 days is permitted without approval in Perth, a city with hundreds of thousands of homes, it's hard to justify why Busselton, a tourism hub, would impose stricter rules. In conclusion, Mayor, councillors, let me be clear, we share the city's desire for vibrant neighbourhoods, affordable housing and responsible tourism. But this draft policy is unnecessary because the aims it solves cannot be fixed at a local scale through land use planning alone. It requires development of housing and enforcement of compliance. It's inequitable because it punishes some suburbs while privileging others. It's misaligned because it runs contrary to Busselton's economic identity. And it's unenforceable because it's based on prohibition instead of compliance. I urge you, or we urge you, to please reconsider the non-preferred area designation over Dunsborough Lakes and other suburbs, allow for a fair limited 90-day exemption, or allow for a fair limited 90 days exemption supported by conditions, registration and enforcement. And let's keep Busselton the place where all residents can participate in and benefit from this thriving visitor economy. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Andre. It was good timing.
No questions?
No questions. Thank you. Cheers. Okay, I now move on to item 8.1, that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of May 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover? Moved, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Cox. Sorry. We're just putting item 8.1 is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of May 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Moved, Councillor Kennedy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cagg. Is there any opposition? There being opposition, Councillor Kennedy, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just move as written, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cagg.
They're as I believe and heard on the day. So I've seconded them.
We have opposition.
Thanks, sir. I'm speaking against voting on these minutes tonight, and I'm foreshadowing that they be held over and voted on for confirmation at the next council meeting. Reason being that they only dropped in the intro last night, and that's 0 clear days between now and then, and understanding orders if elected members have concerns, they have 3 days to convey those concerns about the accuracy of the minutes to the CEO. Clearly, that window hasn't been allowed due to the timing of the meetings. Unfortunate, but when you get 2 meetings per month, this is going to happen sometimes. So I think it's a very logical and responsible thing to do, to take them over until the next meeting. because, personally I have a couple of concerns about accuracy and I'd like to follow them through. So I'm foreshadowing to move that way. Thank you.
Speaker for? Speaker against? Your rebuttal, Councillor Kennedy?
I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Therefore, I put the motion that the minutes for the ordinary council meeting held at Thing be confirmed as true and correct record. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried lost 5-4. So foreshadowed. Do you wish to?
Sorry, public. I foreshadow that these meeting minutes of the 28th of May be brought back to the next council meeting for consideration for adoption. Thank you. For confirmation. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ryan. Is there opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried 8-1. Against with Councillor Cake. So, thank you. Move on to item brought forward. The committee recommendations for items 11.5, 11.6 and the officer recommendations for item 12.1 and 14.1 be adopted en bloc. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Lee. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion forward. All those in favour? The motion is carried 9-0. Item 11.4. Council policy and review the elected members' fees, allowances and expenses. The committee recommendation as shown. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor McNeish, seconded Councillor Cox. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried 9-0. Now move on to item 11.1. As per the standing orders, the committee recommendation will go first, but we have a pulled item from Councillor Ryan. So this is the committee's recommendation that's in front. Do I have a mover?
Point of clarification.
Certainly, Councillor Love.
Just with the committee, sorry, I don't know if I need to stand for point of clarification. Just with this one, I could see that the officers have also pulled this, and I think that goes below Councillor Ryan's, but I'm not too sure. Are we voting on the original item from the committee recommendation or the officers pulled item currently? Sorry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what will happen is the first item, which is the officer's recommendation, will go first. Should that lapse, sorry, the committee recommendation will go first. Should that lapse, then Councillor Ryan's alternate will go. Should that lapse or fail, then the officer's pulled item would be go ahead. So is that clear with everyone? Thank you. So, therefore, looking for a mover for the committee recommendation for item 11.1. Do I have a mover? Being no mover, that lapses. We now move on to Councillor Ryan's foreshadowed alternative. Councillor Ryan, do you wish to move your motion?
As put.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? There being a seconder, Councillor Lee. Is there opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried 9-0. Item 11.2. As before, should this item lapse, then the officer's recommendation will go next. So, do I have a mover for the committee recommendation? I have no movers, therefore that item will lapse. Now we go to the... Sorry, I'm just waiting for that to come up on the screen. So the alternate recommendation. So this has been pulled by the officers. They've put an alternate after making some amendments due to the meeting, the committee meeting. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Ryan, is there a seconder? Councillor Craig, is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried 9-0. Thank you. Move on to item 11.3. Again, this has been pulled by the officers with an alternate recommendation. So should this committee recommendation lapse, then the alternate recommendation, the alternate will go forward. Do I have a mover? Lacking a mover, this will lapse. I now move on to the alternate recommendations put forward by the officers. Now in front of you. Do I have a mover for the alternate recommendation? Moved Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Kennedy. Is there any opposition? Sorry. Councillor McNeish, sorry.
I just was going to ensure the word agree got taken out, just as it has done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, we have moved Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Kennedy, was that correct? Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried 9-0. Item 12.2. This item has been pulled by Councillor Cox, and there are some financial interests that want to be declared. So, Councillor Ryan, do you wish to declare your financial?
I do, thank you. I have a financial interest in item 12.2 as I own a house in Vass where I reside. One of the exclusion zones referred to in item 12.2. Given this interest, I will leave the meeting while the item is being considered.
Councillor McNeish, do you wish to?
I have a financial interest in item 12.2 as I host a two-room in-home B&B that might experience an increase in patronage should the ability to secure an unhosted tourist accommodation approval be restricted in the future. I have also contracted with my daughter to secure an as-yet unconstructed lot that falls within an area affected by proposed restrictions on unhosted tourist accommodation. Given this interest, I will leave the meeting while this item is being considered.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Director Palmer.
I declare a financial interest in item 12.2 as my partner owns and operates a holiday home business and has made a submission contained within the attachment to this report. I also own an approved unhosted short stay accommodation. Given this interest, I will leave the meeting while this item is being considered.
Can we have the item 12.2? So in front of us we have the item 12.2, which is Councillor Cox foreshadowed alternate. The recommendations are on screen now. Councillor Cox, do you wish to move your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move it as written.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Love. Is there opposition? There is opposition. Therefore, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I put forward this alternative is in the officer report on the 11th of December 2024, The non-preferred areas were listed as parts of Dunsborough, Cape Rise Estate, located west of Cape Naturalist Road and Dunsborough East, parts of Vass and Keeley, south of Bustle Highway, Busselton Bypass, parts of Abbey and Broadwater, south of Bustle Highway and north of the Busselton Bypass, parts of Bovell, including Country Road Estate, and Yalyalup, including Provence and Willow Grove. At this meeting, I proposed an alternative to the officer recommendation to also include Dunsborough Lakes as a non-preferred area. The recommendation was endorsed by Council with the addition of Dunsborough Lakes. Later, we had another meeting where Councillor Cake added in parts of East Busselton. The officer response to my alternative to remove Windermere is that the removal of Windermere does not align with the intent of the non-preferred areas within the draft Local Planning Policy 4.1. Windermere Estate adjoins Dunsborough Lakes. The inclusion of this estate is comparable with similar estates that have been identified as non-preferred areas such as Willow Grove and Country Road Estate. However, the issue I have with this is that Willow Grove and Country Road Estate are specifically referenced in the officer report in December 2024, whereas Windermere is not mentioned in any report, just coloured in on a map. It was certainly not my intention to include Windermere as a non-preferred area when I added Dunsborough Lakes. If it had been my intention, I would have specifically referenced this area by name. It has been added, I believe, by default, and I do not believe that it does align with the intent of the non-preferred areas, as the lots in this area are much larger than those in Dunsborough Lakes with ample parking, and due to the larger lot sizes, I would suggest that the amenity issues would be far less significant than in an area such as Dunsborough Lakes. Therefore, councillors, I am requesting the removal of Windermere from the non-preferred areas for unhosted STRA in Dunsborough, and I hope you will support my alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Love, you second.
I'll reserve my right of reply.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker against? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. So I'll be speaking against both those people that oppose and support this motion feel it was not equitable to have an arbitrary line, as said in the presentations tonight, to define where preferred areas can occur in residential zones. To remove Windermere creates more uncertainty around why this area is to be treated specially. It can be identified that the majority of the lots are zoned R2 and R5. However, the same lots can be found in Willow Grove and Country Road. Whilst the original non-preferred areas did not include Windermere, I believe that it should have. And as Councillor Cox just mentioned, there was only reference to Windermere, and it wasn't clearly, well, there was no reference to Windermere, and it was only coloured in on a picture, but a picture paints 1,000 words. So I think it is more clearer in the map. The consultation we received had little submissions other that on R2 and R5 blocks, and we did receive concerns for rural residential areas that are even larger lots than R2 and R5. Thus, the argument that Windermere has larger lots and won't have amenity issues is not valid. It's also identified that those people in the preferred areas, such as Yellingup and Port Geo, have amenity impacts anyway. I believe we must give greater weighting to owner-occupiers rather than investors. Investors should be well aware of risks. USTRA has found a loophole to allow tourism use in a residential zone. We need people invested in our community. The Parliamentary Inquiry and Rental Affordability Index highlights that USTRA does restrict the supply of long-term housing and housing availability, and that the southwest is a hotspot. We must be mindful of over-tourism. Businesses can't keep up, struggling to find workers. Infrastructure is at capacity during peak periods, and we've seen gridlock In our traffic, more demand for rangers, greater bushfire risk, which is very relevant here, and the loss of that coastal village feel. There is 1,400 U-Star in Busselton, which is 6.5% of housing stock. The Dunsborough sub-district is probably higher. We don't need more U-Star. It's out of balance and it's becoming a problem. Thank you, councillors, for listening. I'd encourage you to vote against.
Thank you. Speaker for? Speaker against?
Rather than speak against, I just have a couple of questions of the CEO, if I may, through the chair.
For clarification?
For clarification.
Sure. You may ask your question.
A couple of questions. First, if this is successful tonight, when would it become effective? The first question.
Yeah, I think I might refer to Director Barber there because there's some nuances with this one a little bit as well. Yep.
Through Mr Mayor, becomes effective as soon as the decision is made. So tomorrow it's in force.
Okay. Are we, in light of some of the presentations, or a couple of presentations we had today, would it be possible to have make this enforceable in a period, some time in the future, say 6 months, to allow current expected development applications to be processed and the like?
Thank you,
Can that be done?
Councillor Beecroft. I actually asked this question, but I won't answer it as I will go over to Director Barber to give you a response, but unfortunately...
Well,
okay.
Through Mr Mayor, no, once the policy is in force, it's in force, and planning officers are required to adhere to the policy.
Right.
There's no mechanism to defer the introduction of it.
Okay. Well, a question then for the Mayor, perhaps, or the CEO.
I'll allow you.
Okay, I'm just trying to come up with an equitable solution to a potential problem, that's all. So, would it be possible for me to foreshadow an alternative that is basically what's been presented, but with a time restriction on it? So have it in the alternate.
Again, this question has been asked, but I will allow Mr Barber to answer. So can we put an alternate that this is deferred for until, I mean, I hate to talk in debate, but I'd like to defer to the 9th of July when the public consultation goes for the actual local planning scheme 21.
Is it possible? Yes. Council staff still have to provide, give due regard to any document that has been advertised. So they're still going to consider the current policy as it's drafted and the scheme amendment and any previous council decisions in any of their decision making.
Yeah. And to clarify, this area is covered in the LPS 21 scheme amendment, is that correct?
The scheme amendment, correct, yes.
So it's already in the scheme amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so one more question. The 90-day limit that was suggested by the presentation this evening, how easy or difficult or time-consuming would that be to apply or enforce?
I'll refer that to Director Barber as well. I suppose it's not an alternative we have at the moment, so I'm sure the staff have put their mind to it though.
The 90-day limit referred to in the metropolitan area is set in regulation. We have the ability to exempt properties from a planning approval for a period of time, but not in bushfire-prone areas. So there would be some level of inconsistency. There would also be the ability to still require a DA, still approve a DA and restrict the amount of time that it's used, but we would need some legal advice on that. I haven't looked into that. It's not a
Okay.
mechanism that is current.
I'm sorry, Councillor Croft.
Well, I would
I'm
like
gonna
to foreshadow an alternative,
Sure.
if I may.
Okay, so you're speaking, you're not speaking yet, so what I'll do is allow you to speak, if that's okay. So, Councillor Beecroft, do you wish to speak for or against?
Against.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to speak against this motion simply to foreshadow an alternative. The alternative is effectively the same as Councillor Cox has put forward, but with an amendment that it is to take effect from a date in the future. So that any, that's all.
Okay, so we'll just
That date can
we'll
be
just
determined.
let if governance work on this so that we're aware of what the foreshadowed could be, but my understanding from what Director Barber said, it wouldn't actually be. It was. Go on, please.
Through the Mayor, so as per Director Barber's comments earlier, is that if it's not able to be implemented, it would be ultra vires. That wouldn't be able to be potentially. This is a bit of on the fly stuff here, guys.
It couldn't actually occur. So your foreshadowed motion would be almost not saying, but non-legal in essence. It couldn't be worked through the planning system. So it's where we find ourselves.
Okay.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Cagg, you're speaking against?
I'm speaking against this because our planning staff have brought professionalism, deep knowledge of local issues, and a commitment to robust community consultation throughout this process. Their expertise has ensured that this policy protects community interest while allowing appropriate guidelines for short-term rental and align with broader state planning frameworks. We are now at a critical point, and it is essential we give final approval to expedite its progression to Minister for Planning. Any unnecessary hold-ups could undermine the effective management of short-term rentals in our community and delay the certainty that both residents and operators need. I am not supporting Councillor Cox's alternative, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for? Speaker against? Your microphone, please, Councillor Cagg. Sorry. Councillor Love, you've reserved your right.
I did second this so that Councillor Cox would get a chance to speak to her motion. However, I do hold my reservations of pulling out Windlemere Estate myself, given the officer's comments, and as I previously have made a statement in prior debates when we were deliberating the local planning scheme, I do believe it's inconsistent and counterproductive that the WAPC chose to include hosted and unhosted, chose not to include hosted and unhosted short-term rental accommodations within the tourism and visitor accommodation category, which has resulted in us having to look at short-term unhosted and hosted short-term rental accommodations, because as Councillor Kennedy has alluded to in his debate, tourism and visitor accommodations do not necessarily align with residential amenities, and if we want to ensure a transparent, equitable and future-ready approach to tourism planning, then I believe that we need a... What's the difference of pulling out Windlemere compared to... Sorry, I'm just trying to refer to it. Compared to some of the properties on Dunsborough Lakes and Willow Grove and Country Road Estate that are a bit of larger sizes. Sorry, I actually strike that about Dunsborough Lakes. I don't think they've got many larger density sizes in there. But yeah, I just do think it's a bit ad hoc to now take Windermere out. Though I do commend Councillor Cox on her alternative, as I do think there is a bit of validity in her alternative. However, I just don't think it's a very consistent approach to then be pulling out Windermere when there are other sections within this non-preferred areas that do have those residential densities of R2 to R30. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Cox, you have your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's interesting, the commentary from councillors speaking against my motion. I'll address Councillor Kennedy, the arbitrary line. Of course, there's going to be an arbitrary line because we have certain areas that we have decided will be non-preferred. Councillor Love just said that we have Willow Grove and Country Road. Now, during our deliberations into which areas we would include as non-preferred areas, it was acknowledged that there are very few short-stay, unhosted short-stay accommodation properties in those areas. They are largely residential, therefore they were not really going to be impacted if they became non-preferred areas. Dunsborough Lakes, on the other hand, has very small lots, and there was again much discussion about whether we keep it in or we take it out. The reasoning, in my opinion, was the fact that parking is problematic. The lots are very small, therefore amenity impacts when you have houses on 200 to 400 metre square lots right against each other, and you have 6 or 8 people coming down for the weekend, living next door is somebody who has to get up at 7 a.m. to go and work in a cafe, and they're partying all night. And we know this because the community has come to us and we've heard it loud and clear, and that's what started the whole process of us deciding that we would more heavily police unhosted short-stay accommodation. And there is an arbitrary line. There are also, just up from Cape Rise, there are other subdivisions that are the same, that have the same lot size as Windermere, and they are not in the non-preferred area. So if you want to talk about consistency, councillors might need to also consider other subdivisions further up Cape Naturalist Road that are not included, that are exactly the same as Windermere and Country Road and all those other subdivisions. So we have, my intention originally in pulling out Dunsborough Lakes was because we already know that there are hundreds of unhosted short-stay accommodation premises in that area that will remain as non-conforming uses, but they will remain in that area, and it was felt, in my opinion, by council that we had enough unhosted short-stay accommodation properties in that area, and it was not the original intention that it would be pulled out to increase the housing supply. That may be a side effect, and we would hope that it might be, but that wasn't the original intention. The original intention was about the amenity of local residents, and the feedback that we were getting from our local community that unhosted short-stay accommodation was causing huge amenity issues within our community. Councillor Kennedy obviously has put forward a motion in our planning scheme that was endorsed by council to exclude unhosted short-stay accommodation in all residential areas. Therefore, he believes that to be more equitable. I think this path is more equitable, where we just target areas where we think that there will be higher amenity impacts. So again, I think taking Windermere out is consistent with other areas in Dunsborough that are not included in non-preferred areas. So I don't think that it's particularly problematic. However, everyone will have their own opinion on that, but I would urge you to support councillors to support my alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Before I put this to the vote, I just want the CEO's asked to clarify a point.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I just wanted to clarify the comment of ultra vires, so it's probably not known, so sorry, ultra vires is probably not the right word, but we would still have to give the document due regard anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily change anything. Right. So apologies for that.
Thank you. Okay, if I can just return on the screen to the alternate recommendation that is in front of you. And I put the motion. All those in favour? That's Councillor Cox, Councillor Beecroft, Mayor Cronin. All those against? Councillor Lee, Councillor Cade, Councillor Love and Councillor Kennedy. So the motion is lost for 3. We now return to the officers. The committee, sorry, there's the off. I'll just wait till that comes up. The officer's recommendation, as put before. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kennedy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kay. Is there opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? That's Mayor Cronin, Councillor Lee, Councillor Kay, Councillor Love, Councillor Cox, Councillor Kennedy. Are those against? Councillor Beecroft. The motion's carried 7-1. Thank you. 6-1. Sorry. 6-1. Thank you. If we could open the door, please. Yeah. Just to let councillors know that the officer recommendation was passed at 6-1. So the motion was carried at 6-1. Okay, I now move on to item 12.3. This is a foreshadowed alternate that has been pulled by, or the foreshadow offered by Councillor Andrew McNish. And I've got, I just want to check this number because I've got a different number on the screen to what I've got on my sheet. 12.3, and could we just, what was the one above that, behind it? Can I just see the, sorry, 2 seconds, if I may. I just wanted to see the officer recommendation, if I may. Sorry, I probably saw it wrong, but okay, so we were still looking at the old one. Okay, that's all right. No, I thought we had the wrong number. That's 12.3. Apologies. Yep. Okay. Councillor Manish, you wish to move your motion? Or did you have something to say? Sorry.
I just wanted to know if governance had received the email I sent them about half an hour ago that had some clarifying words pursuant to, I sent it to Liam, governance and Gary. Oh, that's it now? Thank you. Oh, wonderful.
Are any of these changes make it substantive?
I can't see what the changes, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, can't see which.
Just if you focus on one and 2 as is, and if you focus in on number 3, A, B, C, D, whereas before, but number 3, just those 2 lines, make it clear that the advertising that's proposed in above, the advertising include that works in part 1 above will not be undertaken before the finalising of a funding agreement informed by those matters, as before. So just make it very clear that it's just advertising.
So your previous alternate said that the works identified in the draft Marybrook Siesta Park Integrated Coastal Erosion Strategy will not be undertaken before the finalising of a funding agreement informed by such matters, and you have changed that funding agreement to undertaken before the finalising of funding, that the advertising, the works identified. Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, that's fine. So I had intended this afternoon that this just be a matter of advertising.
Yep, you're happy.
And when it came evident that when I got here it hadn't been portrayed as such, then I've moved back to ensure that it's just advertising.
Okay. Councillors, are you all happy with the changes? Councillor Cox?
Can I just ask a question, please, Mr Mayor, of Councillor McNish? Again, just a point of clarification. I note that the officer comment says that it's not limited to the MU08B management unit, but it is limited to the MU08B management unit. Your inclusions are just limited to that particular project. Am I correct in that understanding? So you want it to go out for advertising particularly for that scope of work, not for 21 management units across?
As it's worded in front of you now, the council staff recommendation number 1 pertains to adopt the draft Marybrook-Chester Park Integrated Coastal Erosion Strategy for public advertising. So my number 3 references the advertising above. So in effect,
yes, but just for that particular. Can you just confirm it's just for that particular scope of works?
No.
Yes or no?
Well,
yes or no?
if you thought to amend by
No, I'm not thinking to amend. I just want a yes or no answer because I'm reading the officer comment. I don't wish to get into debate, but my question is that the officer comment is that it's not limited to MU08B. So is it limited to MU08B or not?
The answer is no, because there's no, in that recommendation, there's no
okay, that's
reference
fine.
to
That clarifies. Thank you.
That
clarifies.
I'm only allowing these questions because of the changes you're just making at the moment. But, okay, Councillor Manish, do you wish to move your amended, foreshadowed alternate?
As written on the screen in front of you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Sorry.
Question, if I may.
You
Not a question.
wish to clarify something? Yeah.
Yeah, can I just have a bit more time? I find it hard to toggle. I'm trying to listen, but I've got to try and read this thing as well. Can I have a bit more time to read it?
I guess this is the issue of...
Give me a couple of minutes. Oh,
yeah. I'll give you a minute.
yeah, a minute, thank you.
You're happy? Cool, thank you. You're happy? Thank you. Okay, so we have a moved from Councillor McNish. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder in Councillor Ryan. Is there opposition? There is opposition, therefore, Councillor McNish, do you wish to move or speak to your motion?
Thank you, sir. It's a big piece of work, acknowledged, and how we address coastal inundation and erosion in the bay will be something that we talked about for years, I'm sure. So adopting a strategy for advertising, for people to make comment, is a very good thing. But, and number 2, adding to that strategy advertising is the preparation of a benefit distribution analysis which will inform the distribution of benefits, estimating costs, and informing future funding proposals. That's the last bit of number 2. Another excellent piece of governance of this matter. Vital information that's very worthwhile and necessary in then deliberating on how to fund this, any proposed work as part of the strategy. But going one step further is that informing future funding proposals in item number 2 then takes some direction of the kinds of things that will be in any agreement that would need to be struck before construction takes place. So working out who pays what is a fair thing, and working and telling the people ahead of time that if there's going to be any work, there will need to be a funding solution, an agreement in place before millions of dollars are spent in capital and ongoing costs. So I'm suggesting that the advertising of the strategy is accompanied by the important note about the benefit distribution analysis and the matters that will be considered for any funding agreement that will need to be struck before any work is done. So now we're not putting out what typical local governments do, wonderful plans with coloured pictures and big dreams, and it's all unfunded. We're going out with, this is a necessary piece of work that we need to examine very closely, and this is how we would approach its funding. So we're asking people to consider not only the groin fields and the other coastal mitigation works, but also to consider the kinds of things that will be included in a funding agreement before the works are done. That's only fair to the general ratepayer and the participants to know what kinds of things they're going to be up for, specified area rate or memorial on title even. Important, very important land matters that will be, there's properties here will be handed down to generations. And this could last until the end of the century, these rock groins, or be added to as the sea level rises or whatever. So it's very important that people can get the chance to comment on the advertising of the strategy, the groin fields, and the manner by which it's going to be assessed for funding. So let's put it all out there to advertise and see what comes back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Councillor Ryan.
Reserve my right.
Opposition? There is Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably the main reason I'm opposing Councillor McNish's alternative is just simply because if what he was asking simply was relating to this particular unit, MU08B, I think it would be less problematic. But the fact that he's kind of casting the net so wide, it's not succinct enough for me. The scope of work seems extremely onerous, and I am mindful that the staff are extremely overworked generally, and doing this extra scope of work just at the moment I think is problematic. I think almost this needs to be a separate conversation, potentially a separate notice of motion or a separate report to council. But I think adding in A, B, C, D, you know, have B, which has any agreement forming a precondition to construction shall address all capital design, approvals, assessment, implementation, improvement, monitoring, impact. Well, it's just overwhelming to me that there's just too much extra work. And I think if it was just applied simply to this one project, I think that it would be more, it would make more sense and it would be more achievable. But I think casting the net wider, for me, just makes it too problematic, and therefore I'll be voting against this and I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Mainly I'm speaking against because I don't think this really adds anything to the original substantive motion. So the CHAR map points out and identifies funding opportunities, and those opportunities from the state are grant applications from, I'll just give you the acronyms because they're very wordy. We've got the CAP and the CMPAP, and then we've also got the grants from the state are the CERMP and the PACP. So those funding opportunities have already been identified, so we don't need a dot point to do that. That work's already been done. As council, I think we need to be mindful and sit from a strategic high level. The points in here, they do seem relevant and detailed, but I actually think, contrary to what Councillor Cox has just said, that it casts a narrower net. I think that it limits the work of the benefit distribution analysis by adding these extra points. If we just say, let's do a benefit distribution analysis, that's your scope. You can do whatever, but now we're sort of narrowing it down a bit. So the points are great, but I don't think we need to narrow it down. So just looking at point D, parts of this, when we look at the environmental liabilities and financial liabilities, they are even addressed in point 2 there, as it says, we're going to assess the distribution of cost sharing and benefits. So I believe that point's already in there. And we have the Coastal Management Plan 2020 and also the CHAR map. They address the impacts of coastal stabilisation structures and methods. Again, we don't need D, they've already been identified. And a big one in that, even in the Siesta Park strategy, we have an environmental criteria and it rated seawalls as the worst. Then we've got groins, then we've got sand nourishment as the least impactful. Again, we know what the environmental impacts are. Also from section 3.12 in the strategy, the Siesta Park strategy, it is adjoining coast impacts and it identifies the environmental liabilities within there. And it says that it's an integrated strategy and it will consider the next Western Management Unit, which is Siesta Park. Overall, I do ask myself, should we just let the motion go through? But I believe it has the potential to limit the benefit distribution analysis and pull focus away from the professionals in their field of work, such as the coastal engineers. Just let them do, we pay good money for them to do what they do. Let's let them do it. When it comes back to us to review, we can add a few little dot points in there. Yeah, again, that principle of looking from the larger picture to detail, I don't think we should be focusing on the detail at this point. Thank you, councillors. I'd encourage you to vote against this one.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Speaker 4, Councillor Lee.
Yes, I'll be brief, and I do support this motion because I think it's really important that point 3 is that it's being advertised. We want to include the detail for people who are going to be impacted by costs associated with their homes. So I think it's an opportune time, while it's going out for advertising, that those points are made, that the options for a funding agreement are as such. So it makes sense that the community get to have a comment on that, and hopefully we take advantage of that.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Speaker against? Speaker 4, Councillor Ryan. You've reserved your right.
Thank you. I support this motion, although it's a little bit intricate and it has changed significantly over the last few hours. One of the issues that I picked up in the report was the graph or the line items that said seawall rock 10.7 million, 75,000 per year, and it's like there was no time frame on that. So is that is that cost for 1 year or 10 years? And the director responded with, the operating costs include the monitoring and maintenance of the structures and the ongoing supply and placement of any supplemental beach nourishment. The time frame would be over the lifetime of the structures, which would generally be around 20 years. Please note, though, that there is no suggestion that this would be the cost borne by the city. The next stage of the project is a benefit distribution analysis, which will determine who should pay and the most appropriate mechanisms. Councillors, I think this is what Councillor McNish is trying to do, is who should pay. In the advertising process, the community can actually tell us whether they don't want to pay, they do want to pay, whether there should be a special area rate for the whole of the proposal of the char maps, or not just this proposal. So I think it's a good step to actually go out to advertising with this information, and I'm not sure that we're giving more work for staff. I think this is a consultancy, so we're just asking for the consultant to give us more information based on the comments by the community and where to from here. So I don't think we need to be afraid of this, in that it's just asking the community, that's the whole community, for their response. And it should also be understood that Marybrook might consist of a lot of houses on the beachfront, but the rest of the beachfront in Busselton consists of a lot of infrastructure that the City of Busselton is in charge of as well. So I think this is a good way to ensuring that we'll get more and more intricate information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor McNish, you're right to reply.
Thank you, sir. I'll start with Councillor Cox's comments. If you feel that it's a worthy undertaking, but you think it should only be restricted to management unit number 8, well, then you're certainly entitled, or were certainly entitled, to amend to that effect. I think restricting it to just management unit 8 would mean that everyone else in the bay might think it didn't apply to them. At some stage, this work will apply to them, so they could have a cost. They could have an opportunity to comment up front. This is not a lot of work. This is cut, paste into the advert. That's it. This is just a cut and paste of those things. The officers don't even, that's it. It's, a cut and paste and stick it in the advert. This is what the city's thinking. Make a comment on that. There it is. And as far as Councillor Kennedy, you're talking about that this is going to somehow impact the BDA, well, they might not even read it. They'll just go and do their work. The scope will be written for the BDA study by the officers here, and they'll just do that work. So trying to impute these negativities is quite concerning to me. Councillor Kennedy, you talked about the grants. It's all sewn up, stitched up, the grants to the rescue. Well, I can tell you, if you're relying on grants into the future to fund tens of millions of dollars, guess again, because at some point this is going to come back to the general ratepayer and the stakeholders and with the property owners, and they need a chance, and everyone needs a chance to comment on how this thing's going to be funded going forward. This is the point of the advertising. This is your chance to give us some comment, some feedback. Aren't we supposed to listen to the community? Big items, tens of millions of dollars worth of cost and ongoing operational cost. We need to ask the community what they think about a possible funding mechanism with those things considered. So really, I think that's just fair to all participants, fair to everyone. In the advertising, here's the groin field, here's the mitigation works, here's the bay. This is the kind of thing that could it could cost, and this is how the BDA would be done, great. And this is how the council could be considering in the future how it might be cost apportioned and actually applied and implemented. So there's no arguments. Just like building a pavilion.
I'd rather not get into debate, thank you.
You shouldn't
It's a
do it
rebuttal.
before there's an agreement in
It's
place.
a rebuttal, thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Therefore, I put the motion in front of you. All those in favour? That's Councillor Beecroft, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Lee and Councillor McNeish. All those against? Mayor Cronin, Councillor Kay, Councillor Love, Councillor Cox and Councillor Kennedy. The motion is lost 4-5. Now move to the officers. Officer recommendation. Do I have, I'll just give you time just to remind yourself. Do I have a mover? Councillor Craig, seconded Councillor Kennedy. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? That is Mayor Cronin, Councillor Lee, Councillor Craig, Councillor Love, Councillor Cox, Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Beecroft. Those against, Councillor Ryan and Councillor McNeish. The motion is carried at 7-2. Thank you. We now move on to a confidential item. So we have a report that is of confidential nature in accordance with section 5.232C of the Local Government Act 1995. In accordance to maintain the confidentiality of these items, I will seek a decision to close the meeting to members of the public and all staff. Do I have a mover to close the meeting? Moved Councillor Lee, seconded Councillor Cox. All those in favour? All those carried unanimously. 9-0. I would now request all staff and members of the public to please vacate the gallery. Sure, we will include a member of governance and a member of So this. Yeah. So this. Just waiting for us to go back to live. Okay, we are live. So item 19.1 was the alternate recommendation. For us to go back to live. Recommendation. Okay, we are live. So item 19.1 was alternate recommendation from Councillor Lee as on the screen with that the council carry out options 1 to 4, and that was 154. Carried 5-4. The next ordinary council meeting will be Wednesday, the 25th of June. I now declare this meeting closed at 8:06 p.m. Thank you for your time, councillors, staff, members of the public who have all left. Let's go and get some dinner.